Hi, I'm Rupert Oisler, and I still remember back in the late 1950s walking down to my local toy store and buying my first harmonica. Well, things have changed a lot since then, and I don't see a harmonica as a toy anymore, which I didn't really even then. It was my first musical instrument. But I have learned through the years how to get more music out of it and how to change the harmonica in many ways to make it last longer and also to get more notes out of it. And in working on my own harmonicas over the last 20 years, many people have asked me, well, how do I do this or how do I do that? And often it's a long distance question, and if I could be there, right there in the same room with them, I could show them so easily. And that's how this video evolved. And it also came about as a way of saying thank you, a great big thank you to all the people who have shared their knowledge with me and taught me how to do repairs. And as a big thank you to all the great players that have inspired me and kept me going and kept me wanting to learn more and more about the harp. We're going to be talking about diatonic harmonicas, but much of what we've discovered will apply to chromatics if you wanted to. And it's also important to recognize that every time you try something on harmonica, whether it's playing or repairing or adjusting, it's an experiment. And always experiment on your older harps or ones that you can afford to break, because you can be sure that some things are going to break, and in many cases just the more you learn, the less serious and long-lasting your mistakes will be. But I've learned probably more from my mistakes than anything else. In this tape we're going to talk about gapping and tuning the harp. We're going to talk about freeing stuck reeds and also remounting reed plates and covers on the harmonica so you can take it apart and put it back together. Tape 2 we'll get into reed replacement and then a lot of advanced techniques that change the reed shape and change the harmonica to make overbending more possible. I hope this tape gives you a lot of fun and helps you get more music out of your harp. Many of the tools that you can use to work on your harmonica you can make yourself, and some of them are available easily. One thing that I use a lot is one of these small sets of screwdrivers, like you can get dozens of different places, Radio Shack, Sears, wherever. I use the different size flatheads and the Phillips for various reasons. So that's something that's good to have. Another thing that's real helpful is at the automotive store you can get one of these thickness gauges, which is simply various thicknesses of metal. It was designed to measure like spark plug gaps and that kind of thing. And you can use pieces of this to make things that are real helpful. Like the thicker ones, you can cut a reed wrench out of. You'll see a reed wrench when we do the reed replacement. Some of the medium-sized ones, you can make a shim, which is good for picking up the reeds. Like this is made, this little shim here was made from about a 0.20 millimeter piece of this material. And when you get down to the very thin stuff, like the 0.05 millimeter, it makes a real good thin thing to help with supporting and tuning or to move the reed around or different things like that. So these tools can be used for a lot of different things. When we talk about gapping, there's a couple of special tools that I've made that help. These were actually made from a reed plate, but you can buy brass stock at a lot of hardware stores and craft stores and so forth. Like this is a tool that I use for reshaping reeds. It was just cut directly from a piece of brass stock that I got at a hardware store. But these two tools, I'll show you how they're used in gapping. They were just cut from a brass reed plate that was old and then shaped into this curved shape. This is the Lee Oscar tool kit, and it's good if you don't want to make a lot of tools. A lot of them are pre-made. You have a little poker for poking at reeds and a thing that'll work like a flicker on that end of it, and another shim type of material, kind of like in those automotive gauges. 2 sizes a reed wrench. These will fit the Lee Oscar reeds, not the Honer. And some stuff that's really valuable is these little chisels. We'll show you later on with tip scooping how you can use these, and I believe Lee Oscar recommends using the chisel in tuning, and then a file which can also be helpful for tuning. So that's a tool kit that can be helpful. There's a Phillips head screwdriver in there too. One of the most frustrating things, especially for beginning harmonica players, is encountering a stuck reed. That's when you're going for that fabulous lick or run or note and nothing happens. Most of the time that happens, it's from saliva that has hardened inside your harmonica. You can avoid that by not putting a lot of saliva in your harmonica when you play, and that's something that you actually learn to do. Physiologically, you just change as you play the harmonica more. But ways that can help you do that, besides just consciously knowing you want to do it, are to, of course, not play right after eating or drinking a lot of beer or anything that might create even more sticky saliva. And another thing is, if you feel that you've dumped a bunch into your harmonica, continue to blow it gently and easily and dry it out with your own playing before it has a chance to lock up on you. I know that in playing Whammer Jammer, that high part that this is a C harmonica, but that's an A harmonica. But anyway, really pushing it in performance, I would always go reach for my harmonica the next day or later on in that set if I wasn't going to play it again, and find that area, usually the 8, just below the reed I was blowing, the 9th, usually the 8 would stop up because I'm generating a lot of saliva and being sloppy and trying too hard. So what I found is, after I play something like that where I feel like it's happened, just take the harmonica and do some Bob Dylan licks. And do it enough so that you have pretty much cleared the situation out. As a matter of fact, when you test your harmonica and find that there is a stopped reed, that is one of the best ways to free it, because just getting your harmonica and playing through it and blowing a lot of holes, instead of working on that hole that is stopped and just putting all your force into it. If it's, say, number 6, get 4, 5, 6, 7, or 5, 6, and 7, and just can blow and draw, because blowing is going to throw some of your hot air into the harmonica, and you're going to get some condensation. You're going to tend to sort of melt the frozen stuff. And usually, if you'll just take the time to do that a little bit, it will free your reeds up with no further mechanical action. And as you learn to play with less saliva and blow less saliva into the harmonica, they won't get stuck as much. If that isn't enough, then you can begin to poke and plink and prod and do some of the things that you're going to see later on when we're gapping and tuning. I would take, with the harmonica still together, I would take a tool and stick it in there and free the reed up manually, and then do the blow and draw thing. And one of the brass reed adjustment tools works great. A toothpick will work, a small screwdriver. You just want to be careful not to get the thing stuck in there in between the reed and the reed plate. So the reed that was stuck, I would try to free it up with the covers on the harmonica by pushing from underneath, similar to gapping a reed. Or if it was a blow reed, I could still push from underneath. All I'm trying to do is get the reed moving, just unfreeze, and then blow and draw through the harmonica. And hopefully I can free it up without taking the covers off. If I do take the covers off, in addition to just freeing it up, I could plink it because plinking it, and we're going to talk more about plinking and plucking later, this will get the reed rushing through that reed slot, and it will tend to break apart any kind of frozen gunk that's in there. Obviously, if you're going to take the covers off, or if you get a look in with a strong light, you can see if there's some type of a foreign object, a hair, a bologna sandwich, or maybe even a roasted turkey or something that's crammed between the reed and the reed plate, and you would want to carefully remove that. And you may need to, of course, call the local authorities if there's something very untoward in there. The other thing that can happen sometimes, I've rarely, if ever, encountered this, but I have heard about it, is that the reed itself will become twisted, it will become torqued, turned on its rivet. In that case, you want to apply a reed wrench to the base of the reed and carefully examine it in light and twist it so that you get the reed centered. And again, you can pluck it to make sure that it is traveling freely. If you don't have a reed wrench, a 2/1000 of an inch shim sometimes can be used to nudge the reed over and move it. Even a small screwdriver can. I've heard of taking cigarette paper. I don't know why anyone would be carrying that around, and sliding that between the reed and the reed plate, and then pushing down on the reed, which will force it away from both sides of the reed slot, hopefully evenly. And that might be another way. But what you're trying to do is center that reed back in the slot again. If you're having a consistent problem with certain holes on your harmonica stopping out all the time, it may be time to go in there and change the gap. In fact, you would probably want to change the gap on both the blow and draw reeds on that hole, and probably make it a little bit bigger. Another thing that can cause consistent problems with reed stopping out is playing too hard. Blowing and sucking in your harmonica too hard is a problem in more ways than one, and actually diminishes the sound and the fluidity of what you're getting out of your harp. I remember back in the 1970s, I didn't know anything about how to play amplified harmonica or to get the sound that I wanted, and I had a friend that was a professional rock and roll musician. In addition, he had a fabulous ear, and I took some Little Walter recordings to him and asked him how to get that sound. And I was expecting a big talk on tubes and amplifiers and microphones and everything else, and the first thing he said was, well, first of all, this guy is playing the harmonica very, very softly. That made a big impression on me. I didn't really understand it at the time, but what he explained to me is that he could tell that because the sound of the instrument was not being pushed at all by the player's breath. That all the dynamics that were inherent in the reed and in the chamber were able to live and breathe easily because they weren't being over-pushed by the player. And he could tell that, and then he eventually helped me with amplification also. But later on I found many other corroborations of what he discovered with just his listening, which is that Little Walter did play very quietly. So if you're interested in tone, then learn to play the harmonica with a very moderate amount of breath, and you'll find that you get more sound from the instrument. I'm playing very softly. Now the other thing is that in learning to play softly, what I'm doing actually is training my physiology so that I'm not tightening up everywhere in order to make some noise on the harmonica. It's a really small instrument. The reeds are real little. And the tone and the sound that we get is coming from an openness throughout our whole breathing structure. Now something that can help us to attain and maintain that openness, and therefore maintain our harmonicas more easily, is to learn to use just what we need in playing the harmonica. One thing you can do to speed up the process of learning to do that with your body is some exercises. By getting a lot of good compression in your diaphragmatic breathing, which you can practice like this. I'm blowing in and out very quickly. If you practice that for some period of time, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, however long you can do it before passing out, and then take a long breath. So alternate a long breath with those short staccato breaths, and you will build up that breathing apparatus. While you're doing that, you maintain freedom and ease in your upper body. So you're easy up here, but you're using just your diaphragm. Another area that can be developed and help get your playing going quicker and easier on the harmonica is to develop your embouchure. One exercise that's real helpful with that is to make a pursed shape with your lips and then go into a wide smile. It looks pretty funny, so always practice in front of a mirror. Something like this. So you want to stick your lips out as far as you can and then back as far as they'll go. And you practice that. It's good to practice that at traffic lights, and you'll get some, you'll meet a lot of interesting people that way. Another thing that you can do when you're on a very important date, especially when you're eating out, is practice chewing with your mouth, your lips closed, but your mouth getting as open as possible inside. So the distance between your teeth is as great as it can be, but your lips stay together while you're chewing. I'll bet you if you chew your whole dinner that way and then pick up your harmonica, of course after brushing your teeth and rinsing out your mouth, you'll find a dramatic difference in what you're able to achieve on the harmonica. To play well, what you're looking for is a balance of your energy. It takes tension to play, but in certain areas. By developing your embouchure and your diaphragm, then you can become open in the other areas. This will help you to achieve a much larger tone, especially be able to play lower harmonicas because you've got a big chamber which is resonating since you're not closing down and tightening everywhere. For example, this is a low D flat that I made from some MS, retuning some low D MS plates. And you get a nice tone without really pushing a lot on the harmonica. If you listen to the low end, it's just so you have all those bends available because there's lots of space inside to bring those tones down. It's not just in playing slow and in tone that playing moderately will help you, but also when you begin to add speed to your playing, you'll find that if you're not going at 150% all the time, when you want to emphasize a passage, you have a lot more freedom and fluidity to do that. So by playing softly, you're going to make your harmonica last longer, and you're going to be able to achieve the goals that you want in your playing that much quicker. Now we're going to talk about gapping. you can do a lot to improve the responsiveness of your harmonica by learning how to gap the reeds. Gapping the reed is a way of adjusting the distance of the reed from the reed plate and also the curvature of the reed as it leaves the rivet pad. Reed response in a harmonica is a combination of blow and draw reeds. So you'll find that gapping will require some experimentation on your part as to the interaction of those two reeds, especially in holes where there's bending. Ideally speaking, you will get more effective air use in the harmonica if the reed is very close to the reed plate, right where it leaves the rivet pad, so there's no offset between the bottom of the reed and the top of the reed plate, and it travels along pretty much like that till about halfway down the reed's length, and then there's a very gentle curvature so that the tip of the reed is slightly away from the reed plate. Now, the adjustment of the gaps can be done using a lot of different tools, and I'm showing you on a reed plate that's not on a harmonica. In reality, you may do a lot of your adjustments on a harmonica, but I think it's easier to see what's going on when you're off the harmonica. So I'll show you that first, and then we'll show you on the harmonica. I like to use tools working on the reeds that are softer than the reeds, or brass, the same as the reeds or something, because I don't like to scrape or scratch the reeds up. And of course, you always want to wear safety goggles when working on your reeds. If you're going to use a toothpick, the way I would use it is a way to set the curvature. First, I would support the reed with my thumb or something else so that I'm not going to change the back end of it, and I would get the proper curvature in the front end by massaging the reed from below and pushing it out with the toothpick. Now, a tool that I've designed that I think works even better, because with a small tool I've used paper clips and all kinds of stuff, but you can get the tool caught in your reed plate, and then you have some problems. So what you want to do in that case is just throw the whole thing away, and or else get a customizer to do it. But by using this tool, which is this little piece of a brass reed plate, it's about the same size as a reed on the end and just a little bit narrower than a reed slot. So when it goes in to the reed slot and pushes on the reed, you don't have as much danger of getting it caught. But this little tool, again, I can support the reed and then massage it. And what I'm doing now is putting a slight curvature in the reed. Once I've put the curvature in the reed, I may find that my reed is a little higher off the plate than I want it to be. So then I would gently use the tool, or a similar tool, to massage the base part of the reed back down even with the plate. And again, I don't push hard on the rivet end unless I'm doing some kind of a radical reed technique, which we'll talk about later. So that's it in a nutshell. If the reed plates are mounted on a comb, you can use two of these tools, one from underneath and one from above, to massage the rear portion of the reed and keep that nice and flat along the reed plate, and putting the curve in from underneath with this. There's other ways you can put the curve in when the reeds are off, reed plates are off. This is a little tool from the Lee Oscar kit. It's brass, or you can make one from your automotive shims, in which case I'll slide the tool underneath, again only about halfway. I'll support the reed again with my thumb, and I'll use the tool to make the curve. Now, if I get too much of a curve, obviously I can support the reed from below with a finger and press down with various kinds of tools to get the reed back. I don't need a big curve. What I'm looking for is enough gap at the end of the reed to allow the reed to vibrate, and not very much at the rivet end. After I set or adjust an offset, I always pluck the reed 3 or 4 times and it will tend to settle. I may have to adjust a reed 5 or 6 times before I have the offset the way I like it. I would always gap the reeds before I tune them. Tuning is the last thing I would do in any reed work. As a general rule of thumb, a longer reed needs more of an offset from the plate than a shorter reed, and a blow reed generally needs a little bit more offset depending on your playing attack. So the best thing to do is to begin to study the harmonicas that blow well for you and use those as models in your beginning gapping experiments. And another thing to keep in mind, that reed interaction, what I would do for the reeds that are bending, like the 2 and the 3 hole, the 4 hole, is that I would set the gaps as close as everything works really well for me, and then if I want to make the bending, for example on hole 3, easier, I would open the draw reed gap just slightly, because that reed closes down as it begins to bend, and so that gives you more leeway in that bending process. Now let's look at the reed plates on the comb and do some gapping. Now in actuality, a lot of your reed adjustment will probably take place with the plates still on the harmonica, especially if you have a harmonica which doesn't have removable plates. So I've put the plates back on the harmonica so you can see that process. Again, it's still the same. What you're doing is you're changing the distance of the reed from the plate by either pressing down on a blow reed, or from inside pressing out on a blow reed, or on a draw reed. Again, you could press from inside the harmonica or from outside the harmonica with a tool. I showed you part of the problems with a toothpick. You can use a small screwdriver that will fit through the reed slot. You can use different things. I think these brass little things work well, because I have a bent end and I can press from within and massage that reed up, or from without. Another thing, I can actually use the shim itself, place it under the reed, push it not too far back, and then using a combination of my finger or thumb and the shim, I can change the profile and the gap of the reed. And I always plink the reed afterwards to get its settled position. On a blow reed, if it's still on the harmonica, obviously I can't use the shim. And that's one reason that I use 2 of these brass pieces, because on a blow reed I can take one bent piece and start with it inside of the harmonica where it is supporting the rivet end of the reed, and I can take another piece and start with it on the outside of the harmonica, and using the pair of them I can actually change reed shape and gapping together. I can get that little flip in the end of the reed without adding too much gap to the reed, by a combination of using the piece inside and outside together to massage that reed. And I can do that without actually taking the reed off the harmonica. Now, why in the world am I doing this? First of all, the most basic reason that a person would start to gap is because they have a harmonica that for some reason doesn't seem to be working properly. And if they've looked at the harmonica and seen that the reed plate and the comb are basically making good contact, and yet for some reason, and this seems to happen a lot with hole number 3, for example, where you have a lot of bends available, for some reason the harmonica seems to be very leaky. What's very possible, and if you take the harmonica apart and take a look at it, you may even see something that looks like this. where the third hole reed is inordinately far away from the harmonica compared to the other ones. And you may have trouble with your bend. That's not really too bad. But just from physically examining the harmonica, which you can do by holding it up to a light, even with the covers on, you may see that one or two reeds just seems to be too far away or too close to the harmonica. Like here, the second reed is kind of close. And they will probably correspond to the holes that you're having problems with. So by changing that setting to be more like the rest of the reeds on the harmonica, you're going to get a response that's more similar throughout the harmonica and probably end up with less problems. So one reason is to change a problem hole. And many times that involves changing the draw reed and the blow reed. And often you can see what to do just by examining the harmonica under light, either with the covers on. Of course, it's easier with the covers off. Now, another reason that you would want to change the gapping is to match your particular playing style. If you play very hard on the harmonica, which we've discussed as not being the best for the life of the harmonica, still it may be the way that you play. You will find that a higher action gives you less problems and enables you to hit your notes without stopping them out. If you want to get over bends, lower action is going to be important. Now let's look at the harmonica with the covers on. So with the covers on the harmonica, it's the same process. You can adjust the blow reeds, pushing them towards the reed plate from inside. You can adjust the draw reeds, pushing them away from the reed plate from the inside. And if you have a good light source, you can look inside the harmonica from the back and adjust the blow reeds, pushing them from the back, and adjust the draw reeds towards the plate from the back. It's just very hard to see this on video, and it's a lot harder to do it too. In practice, I do most of my gapping with the reed plate at least visible on the harmonica, if not off of it. But right now this harmonica has a little bit of a problem. When I play the fourth hole, for example, I'm having a lag. It's not coming out right. So I know from that the fourth hole draw is a little bit too close to the plate. Now I can take my adjuster, and again it can be a number of different things, and I can stick it in the fourth hole. I can find that reed and I can massage it away from the reed plate. Again, this is something that is kind of blind with the covers on, but still possible to do. And now I try it, and the blowing of the reed takes the place of the plinking it. It just causes the reed to vibrate. It'll resettle, and it needs a little bit more adjustment, but it's working a lot better. And I test it with the overblow if that's something interesting to me, because if I've gotten it too far away, that overblow is going to be hard. And it comes out okay, and I can bend it up a little bit. Now I move on to the fifth hole, and I can tell right away I've got a lot too much air coming through that fifth hole, and I can't hit that overblow. So I'll show you what's happening there. You probably guessed it. The fifth hole draw is way too far away from the plate. It's sticking up. So I could do this from the back of the harmonica if I really didn't want to take the covers off, or if I was working on a marine band, but I would rather do that. I put it in place, Again, if the covers were on, I would blow the thing. With the covers off, I'm just going to try plinking it. There's that fourth hole that I was working on. And that fourth hole is still trying to be a little bit close, so I'm going to change that. This is what I did with the covers on. I had the piece inside and I was pushing the reed out. And now I'll try the harmonica. See, that fifth hole was the one that was giving me problems. It's now settled in place. So I've got all of those holes to where I feel they're operating okay, and that's gapping. Where you have a lot of real close gapping is if you want to get into those overdraws on the 8th and 9th and 10th holes, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th holes, a combination, because they're very short reeds and they're very close tolerances to get a combination of a regular note and also an overdraw. So we'll look at that. In general, with gapping, what I'm looking for is the further I go up, the shorter the reed, the closer it gets to the plate in general. The longer the reed, the further it is away. With these little bitty reeds, it's finding that optimum distance where it's just close enough. And right now I'm massaging that draw reed into the plate on the 7th hole. And of course here's the 8th and the 9th and the 10th. And I bring them into the hole and then I'll plink them. And sometimes it's hard to plink these reeds because they're so close that I can't even get the plinker in there. In which case I may just go back to blowing, or I may push the reed out from within, get a hold of it with the plinker and pop it that way. And what I'm looking for is that optimum distance. Likewise, on the blow reeds, I'll push them out and then I'll go to blow them and I'll play them. This kind of adjustment, it may take up to 10, or it could take a lot of different adjustments, and then playing the harmonica several times and making a note of what's happening. But what I'm looking for in those upper reeds, if I can start on the blow, this happens to be a B-flat harmonica. It's just what I pulled out of my box to do this gapping. So these are not even particularly short. If I was working with, for example, an F harmonica, these would be really short. But I'm looking to be able to start at the 7th hole blow and do a chromatic scale. See, now I got the 7th, and when I came to the 8th draw, I'm not really getting it. So I need a little more space there, which I can do with the cover on. And again, it's just a matter of adjustment. So I got everything pretty well except for this 9th hole, which is going to be a combination of closing up this blow reed and closing up the draw reed. That draw reed is real close there, so what I'm going to do is hold it down, and if it gets right down to it, I may have to take the harmonica apart and put a little bend in that 9th hole blow reed too. These higher reeds are a lot easier when you add some other custom approaches to them, like I'll show you at the end of the video. But even using basically the stock settings, you can get a note out of these. So I've almost got it there to where I can hit it, but I can hit it after I've gone. It's there, and if I keep adjusting it, I can get even further. So what I would do is put the harmonica together then. So part of it is I'm getting some air loss through the cover plates. And I would see what I've got here. And I may play it for a couple of days if I don't have to use it right away, because these reeds will settle still even after plinking. Okay, let's talk about tuning. Tuning is the way that we're going to change the pitch on a reed in the harmonica. Basically, the easiest thing to do is to think about the reed as having two halves. The first half is from the rivet point to the middle of the reed, and then the next half is from the middle of the reed to the free end of the reed. And what happens again, when the reed is vibrating, it's creating a certain pitch. And we change that pitch in two ways. Taking material off of the free end of the reed, we're going to raise the pitch of the reed. Likewise, by adding material to that free end, you're going to lower the pitch. Sometimes people will make a real low harmonica by adding little bits of solder or beeswax or various things to the end of the reed. So when wanting to raise the pitch of a reed, you take material off of the free end. It's the opposite on the fixed end of the reed. If you take material off the fixed end of the reed, then you're going to lower the pitch of the reed. If you add material to the fixed end of the reed, then you will be raising the pitch of the reed. Now, those changes in material on the reed are most affected at either end. In other words, you raise the pitch more by taking material off closer to the very tip of the reed than you do by taking it off in the middle of the reed. You lower the pitch more by taking material off real close to the rivet end of the reed. So that's physically what's involved. And I find that it's just much easier for me to use a tuner than it is to try to use another harmonica or a piano or something to get the pitch. So there's various kinds of tuners. One tuner that's generally recognized as the most accurate is a strobe tuner. And this is a Kahn strobe tuner. I used to do all my tuning with this. I've quit using the strobe tuner just because it's so cumbersome, and it's so much easier to use these little guitar tuners. One that I've used with success is this little Sabine auto tuner. And here you don't have to select a pitch. You can just play a note, and it will tell you what the pitch is with the flashing lights, and it'll tell you whether you're sharp or flat or perfectly in tune. And you can also make adjustments to it to tune sharp or flat if you want to. I tune my harmonicas a little sharp. The tuner that I've been using lately is a real inexpensive little tuner made by Korg. I think it costs $19 at the music store. and it uses a little needle. Again, you don't have to select the pitch. It will tell you. In that case, it's a C sharp, and I am a little sharp. It also, on the dial, I don't know if you can see it, but it gives you the number of cents. So I find that using a tuner is the easiest thing for me. And of course, you do need to know what the notes on all your different harmonicas are, whether you're using a B flat harmonica, a G harmonica, A harmonica. So you might want to make a little chart for each harmonica if you're not clear about that. Now, oftentimes you can tune a harmonica reed if it goes a little flat, but many times if it does go flat, it will be cracked. And you can find that out when you plink the reed after tuning if it continues to lose pitch. I find it necessary to tune a harmonica with the covers off. And it's pretty easy to tune the harmonica with the reed plates on, but if you're going to do extensive tuning, it's easier to take at least the blow plate off. The tools that I use are some way of supporting the reed that I'm tuning. This is one of the little shims that we use in gapping. It was made from the automotive tool kit, and you can place that under a reed to support it when you're tuning. You can use a small screwdriver when you're doing the blow reeds from the inside of the harmonica to support the blow reed, or you can make a small tool out like this is just a finishing nail that was pounded in shape, and it can slip right in there, and I don't even have to hold it, but I can tune on the reed. Now the tools that I use, I like to take as much an even amount of material as I can off the reed. So I love these little sanding wands that are available from craft stores, Micro Mart, different places. And this enables me to take an even amount of material. Like if I'm going to raise the pitch of the reed, I can go from half the reed to the end of it and take an equal amount of material, and also it polishes the reed. If I'm going to make the reed go flatter, then I can go from the back half towards the rivet end and again polish the reed and lower the pitch. I've lowered the pitch of reeds as much as 1.5 steps with these sanding wands and had them work real well. Like this is a low A harmonica that I made from a low C. And that just was done with various sanding wands. I'll start with a coarser grit and move to a medium grit, and then as I get the reed closer to being to the pitch I want it, I'll go to the 400. You can make your own sanding wands with even 1200 grit paper if you want to get really smooth on your reeds. So basically what is involved, if it's a draw reed, is just supporting the reed with a shim and testing the pitch, and then taking some material off and testing the pitch again. Now, once I get to the point where it's close with the reed cover off, I'll put the covers on to check the tuning, because the tuning will vary with the covers on the harmonica. For a blow reed, this is a very useful little tool. This is a tool that came from a hardware store that sells Dremel tools, and it's a little diamond cutter. And the tiny little bit at the end is small enough to easily fit in the reed slot, and it enables me to change the pitch of the reed without having to take the blow plate off the harmonica. If I simply support the blow reed from underneath, either with a handmade tool or just a small screwdriver, and then in this case I can't take material off the whole length or the whole width of the reed, so I will use the cutter if I wanted to raise the pitch on this reed, then I would simply make a scratch on the end of the reed from the free end towards the middle, and then test. If I wanted to flatten that reed, then I would make a scratch from the fixed end toward the middle and test the reed. So let's do some tuning. What I find that I do for tuning mostly is make small adjustments. After each time that I play out, I test all the harmonicas that I play that I played that night, the next day, and generally it helps a lot to learn to play the octave spread, because that's when you're really going to be able to tell if your harmonica is in tune to itself, if you can hear the beats on the octave, and then as you begin to be able to hear the beats on a chord the same way. And there's all kinds of different ways to tune just intonation and so forth and so on that you will get better at as you begin to practice with it. But mainly I just want to get to you the mechanics of how you're going to change these pitches. Now, what I'll do with a harmonica to decide whether I want to tune it is I'll play the octave spreads. So I'll start with usually the blows and then go to the draws or whatever. So if you don't know what those are, get some type of a chart and take a look at what I'm saying, because like this is a B flat harp, so I'll start with 1 and 4, which would be a B flat. So you can hear that F, the 6 and 9, has got more beats than the rest of them. The rest of them are kind of acceptable for the way that I play. And I would do the draws. The next one is a 7th chord. So as far as this harmonica goes, what I found from what I just played is that I want to change the 6 and 9, and I want to change the 5 and 9 draw. So I'll look at my tuner on for example the 6 and 9, and I'll try to figure out, well, which one is off here. And I can see that you may be able to hear it yourself, but I can see that the 6 blow is flatter than the 9 blow. So I'm going to check out what's going on between the 6 and the 3, because that's the other octave using the same note. And it's really the same situation. I've got a 3 that's higher in pitch, a 6 that's lower in pitch, and a 9 that's higher in pitch. So that tells me that I want to raise the pitch on my 6 blow. And remember, my harmonicas, I tend to tune them a little sharp. So these are sharp to this tuner. So what I'm going to do is take my little diamond cutter, and I'll take my screwdriver and support the 6th reed, the blow reed, from underneath, and I'll take the cutter and I'll scrape the end of that reed. What I'm trying to do is take a little bit of material off without changing the gap on the reed. That's why I support the reed. And then I try to wipe it off, because if I've left a little bit of metal on it, that's going to affect the pitch. And condensation, the temperature of the harmonica, if I push it up a little bit, I'll push it back down. All these things affect the pitch. And sometimes, if you know the way that you play, your harmonicas may be tuned a little bit differently for playing than they are for just resting checking. Now I'm going to check that spread again. That's the 6-9, and there's no beats in it now. And the 3-6 works too. When you're working with an octave, if the pitches are close, then they're going to tend to harmonize with. They're going to bring themselves together. And so I'm happy that I've got that where I want it. Now I'm going to check this 5/9 draw. Remember, on your draw notes, you want to go 3/7, 4/8, 5/9, and 6/10. So you have a wider spread with your draw octaves than you do with your blow octaves. On this situation, I've got a higher 5 draw than the 9 draw. Now, depending on how you want to tune, if you want to get into just intonation and have a little bit of a sweeter sounding 7th chord, you might want that 5 draw to be flatter. My 5 draw is a little sharper, which I tend to leave it there because I just like it that way. So what I'm going to do is raise my 9 draw. You may decide, if you were playing that same spread on your harmonica, you may have decided that you wanted to lower the 5. So the draw notes are a little bit easier, and I just put my little shim underneath that 9 draw, and I don't push it back too far. And if my gap is extremely low, I may want to use a thinner shim. I may want to go to the 002 shim. I can push it back farther without pushing that reed up. And then I take my little sanding wand and I just work on the end of the reed, which is the free end, and I go for a flat. I'm interested in an even polishing. And I just take a little bit off and rub it, and then check it and see how it's doing. And if it's where I want it, then I'm done with this harmonica and I'll go on to the next. If it's not, then I'll tune it some more. Now what's happened here is I've actually raised that a little more than I needed to. So I took off more material than I needed to. So I'll open it back up. And here I would definitely want to use my thinner shim so I can get back towards the rivet end of that reed. And I'll again take my sanding wand and I'll work on the rivet end and take a little bit of material off of that, just kind of polishing it, and see where I stand again. Now I'm happy with it. It doesn't have the beats anymore. So I may put the harmonica back together and test it, but as far as I'm concerned, now I've got a harmonica that plays enough in tune so I can gig with it. So for tuning, basically anything that will remove material from the reed will work. I like the sanding wands. You can use just plain sandpaper, the chisels from the Lee Oscar toolkit. Peter Madcat Ruth apparently used to use pins to scratch the reeds. Some people use motorized moto tools with polishing wheels. There's so many different things that you can use. A pocket knife. Just want to remove material from the reed and change it. So that's the mechanics of tuning, and much of my tuning just involves making small adjustments to a harmonica as it sits. But I might also make a completely new harmonica, like a low D flat or a low A. It's the same mechanical process. You just take more material off of more reeds. Or you could make some minor tuned harmonicas, take a Hohner Golden Melody and turn it into a Lee Oscar style tuned harp. There's just millions, literally hundreds or whatever, of different kinds of tunings. If you check with Pat Misson, he has an Alter Tunings paper. One popular tuning would be to take the 5th draw reed and raise it a half step. And again, all you would do is take material off the end of that reed. So it's the same mechanical process. It's just the degree and how many reeds you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. But that's how you tune a harmonica. of the customization techniques and adjustments and even tuning and gapping and things like that are not really possible unless you can take the harmonica apart. More and more harmonicas are being made today so that you can do that, but in case you have a harmonica that you can't do that with, or you maybe just like marine bands or something, I'm going to show you how to change your harmonica into a harmonica that does have removable covers and reed plates. And I'm going to start with a Golden Melody since that's the one I like to play. Okay, I happen to have an old Golden Melody here, which many of you probably don't even know about, but originally the Golden Melodies, even the cover plates were put together with little nails. So the first thing we're going to do is remove those cover plates carefully using some type of a knife that you've got lying around your house. Remember, don't use your wife's good kitchen knives, and don't destroy any reeds or fingers when you're taking these cover plates off. But basically what you want to do is just get that blade in there and get these little nails and get them out of there. Alright, once you have the cover plate off, hopefully you've ordered some little screws from Hohner that will enable you to put these plates on the way they do it now. And what I do is I take a little socket from my little socket set, and I take a little rounded punch, and I get a hammer. I just take that cover plate and hold it over the socket and put the punch in the hole that had the little nail, and I give it a few good whacks until I've indented that thing to where I think it might receive that screw. And then I just test it. And that one looks pretty good. So I'll do that to all 4 holes, and then I'll select a bit which is just about the size or slightly larger than the female section of the screw, and I'll drill out the ends of the cover plate. That's about a 1/8 inch bit. So I'll drill that out. Okay, once I've got the cover plates ready to receive those screws, I'm going to need to do a couple things. I need to get these reed plates off of the Golden Melody body. And if this is an old Golden Melody, I'm going to need to alter these things on the end that were holding the nails. I'm going to have to enlarge them and modify them so that they can receive the screws. The easiest way I've found to get rid of these reed plates is to take, again, this small socket. This is a little 3/16 socket. I take the small end of it, and I'll make sure that the head of the nail is in that socket. Then I take my little brass hammer and tap the nail through, and I do that to all the nails on one side of the harmonica, being careful. I'm careful not to smash any reeds. Then I turn the harmonica over and knock all those nails through. Now this reed plate is missing a reed. This harmonica's been hanging around waiting to have this job done to it. Once I get the nails through, I can pull some of them out. I may have to use pliers. And again, I don't want to distort these reeds too much. I'm basically just trying to get the nail situation off the harmonica. Once I've got the reed plate off the body, I've finished the job with getting the nails out of there with the little hammer. Now these reed plates are ready to be mounted with screws. I'm going to need to make some changes. You can see that reed plate is excessively curved, and I want it to be a little bit flatter, so I'm going to work on that. and I'll flatten it out a little bit with my hands. Some curvature is okay, but I'd rather have it just about flat. One thing that can help a lot in working with reed plates, if they are bent, is either a plate of glass, or what I use is a large piece of polished granite, which is an extremely flat surface. So a large piece of glass that is pretty thick, or a polished rock that is flat, will give you a true surface to work on to flatten out your reed plates. It'll also help in sanding combs, that kind of thing. But right now I'm just kind of doing this by eye. Now I'm going to take this comb and drill it out to receive the screws. I've got to have a bit, again, that's a little bit larger than the female part of the screw. Once I've drilled this hole out, then I'm going to have to lower this so that the cover will fit on there. Now what I'll do is I'll take the largest bit that my drill will take. I have a small drill. I don't know if any of you have that problem, but I'll use this bit. It is the biggest bit I think that'll go in here, and I'll just use it to bring these posts down, and half the time I'll tear them up like that, and then I'll have to go get something else like a moto tool. Basically I'm just trying to get them out of there. Okay, we're going to get rid of these things here, and maybe a thumb or two, and get this thing to where we can make it into a harmonica that we can be proud of. Where's that axe? Alright, we're gonna get rid of those posts somehow. Let's just see here. Don't try this at home. I'm a trained professional. Alright. Now, are you there? Let's see. We've got this comb ready to go. These cover plates are ready to go. Now we're back to these reed plates. They have nail holes through them which are almost perfect to receive an 0.80 screw. Remember, when you're ordering 0.80 screws, I personally go for a Phillips head, because when you're dealing with a small screw like this, those slot heads, it's just hard to keep that driver in that little slot. So I go for a Phillips head screw, and I've got about a 3/8 inch 0.80 screw here. Now as it stands, it's a little bit tight on that hole. Since it's stainless steel, it will tap that hole itself. What I do is I take a 1/8 inch drill bit, not a 1/8 inch, a 1/16 inch drill bit, and I'll clean out the holes on the draw plate and leave the holes on the blow plate, and I'll tap them out with the screw itself. So I've enlarged the holes on the draw plate. Now this is an old Golden Melody comb, so there's no hole in the middle at the front of the comb. On the newer combs, they actually have a hole through the comb there, and I've drilled holes through that comb there, and I've used the new ones, and I've drilled holes through the plates and then tapped the blow plate, but it's really not necessary. all you really need on this harmonica is about 3 screws. So I'll just put the draw plate on, and then I'll put the blow plate in place. I'm going to have to take this back apart and put a new reed in there. But if I just take some of these 80 stainless steel screws, and as long as I'm careful with this, I can just come through here, and what I'll do for 3 screws is I'll go for the ends, and I'll just carefully start that screw in the old nail hole that's in the blow plate, and I may back it off and come down and back it off the same way as I would if I had an actual tapper, tap and die deal, and until I get it so that it's snug. And again, over tightening is not something you want to do, and you don't want to strip that hole now that you've created it. So I've used that stainless steel screw to tap through the brass plate, and I've got it intact, and then I'm going to take one and put it through the middle, same way. Middle of the back, and then I go through the front. So now I've got a harmonica that I can take the reed plates off of and screw them back on and screw them back off and work on the thing. Now the marine band is a little bit more involved than the golden melody. First of all, you want to carefully pry the cover up. What I do is come back to the cover later on and drill out just the front hole. I drill out the front hole in the comb and the front hole in the cover with a 1/16 inch bit, and that enables one of those 80 screws to go through there, and one screw is enough to hold the cover down. So I carefully pry off the covers, and set them aside. And then what I want to do is I want to get these nails out of the harmonica so that I can turn them into screws. So what I first will do is insert either a thin bladed knife or a razor blade in the edge of the harmonica. Careful not to sever my fingers or create any undue damage to the harmonica or comb. Okay, I've freed up the back, the nails at the ends of the harmonica, and all I'm trying to do is be able to pry up the back of the reed plate enough so that I can get those nails out of the back of the reed plate. I want to do that on both sides of the harmonica. Now once I have the nails in the back of the plate so they're reachable, I can snug down these end nails again. And I want to pull those nails on the back of the plate out. Once I have the nails out of both sides of the harmonica on the back of the harmonica, I'm going to drill through so that I can put these plates on with screws. I left the nails in the end so that the plates are still on the comb in the same way that they were with the nails. What I'm going to do is drill through the draw side of the plate and drill out through the blow side. And what I'm going to use is a little drill bit, which is for an odd 80 screw. It's a bit that'll cut a hole, which I can then tap to odd 80. And I've got it mounted in a in a little drill press that I can attach to my drill. So that's, if you have a little drill press, that's fine. I've done this same job by hand. I find that the drill press makes it a little bit easier. And what I do is I just take a couple pieces of wood and put the harmonica between them and then drill the holes. Once I've got the holes drilled, I go ahead and remove the plates from the harmonica by prying out all the nails. And again, carefully, I don't want to bend the plates, break any reeds, or anything like that. Now the comb, since it's a wooden comb, what I would do is either replace this with a comb that was made by Bill Rommel out of Lucite, or I would take this comb and treat it either with beeswax or with some kind of non-toxic urethane. First, I would take these holes and increase them with a 1/16 inch bit so that the screws will go through. So I would treat the comb. And I would take the draw plate and increase those holes so that the screws will go through. And the blow plate, I'm going to need a tap with that aught 80 tap. Or I could use the stainless steel screws. So we tap the blow plate out for the aught 80 screws. And again, because I'm using a stainless steel screw in a brass plate, I could actually do it with the screw, but it's just easier to use a tap. So I get those holes threaded. And now, assuming I've treated the comb, which obviously I haven't had time to do yet, I'm just going to show you how. I now have a tin sandwich or a brass sandwich that I can take apart and put back together again without having to use those little nails. So I've got the enlarged holes in the comb and in the draw plate. I slip an aught 80 screw through there. And assuming that this harmonica comb has been treated with beeswax or something, I now have sort of a lifetime harmonica because I can take it apart, put reeds on it, and put it back together. And what's holding the reed plates on the comb now are the 3 screws in the back, and I haven't drilled these holes yet, but the 2 screws in the front that are going to go through the reed plates, the comb, and also the cover plates. And those screws, I'll put little nuts on the end. Then they'll hold the cover plates and the front of the reed plates. So now I have a marine band harmonica that I can take apart and put back together again. Now, in some ways, working with an aught 80 drill and tap and everything to drill through the brass on the marine band is kind of small. And you could, if marine bands are your real interest, you could choose a larger screw size and get the appropriate drill bits and taps for that. It's just that what I personally do a lot is change my golden melodies. And so I've got the aught 80 screws, and it's just easy for me to do that work with those. But if you like to change the marine bands around, you might want to look at a larger screw size, and therefore a larger tap, a larger drill bit. Hey, that marks the end of tape 1, and we do thank you for joining us and hope you have a lot of fun with all these techniques. Remember to come aboard for tape 2, where we talk about reed replacement and many advanced reed shaping techniques and things that will help you get more compression out of the harmonica. Remember to share all these fascinating techniques with your loved ones for many moments of scintillating intimacy.
Bye.